And when Jane returned to her usual state of consciousness, she discovered that she produced this script called The Universe is Idea Construction.
What if the biggest spiritual breakthrough of the 20th century didn't happen in a temple or a lab, but in a tiny apartment in Elmira, New York? What if a woman who didn't believe in anything psychic suddenly began speaking with a voice that wasn't her own, sharing information she couldn't possibly know, predicting events before they happened, and revealing truths no government ever wanted in the open? And what if every session was recorded, checked, tested, and never proven wrong? The story of Jane Roberts. This is the real story of Jane Roberts and the presence that called itself Seth. A voice that didn't just challenge what we think we know about science, it tore the floor out from under it. A voice that didn't just talk about God, consciousness, or the soul, it exposed what we were never supposed to find, that reality is not something happening to you. It's something you create moment by moment with every thought, emotion, and belief you carry. It began in the early 1960s. Jane Roberts was not a mystic, not a medium, not a spiritual seeker. She was, by all accounts, a rational, skeptical writer who dismissed the paranormal entirely. But during a simple writing exercise, she felt something shift, like a pressure, a rushing wind inside her mind. And then a voice emerged. Not a whisper, not a fragment, but a full, articulate intelligence speaking through her consciousness with perfect cadence and startling authority. This voice called itself Seth, and it spoke in languages Jane had never studied, including ancient Greek. It revealed geopolitical operations that would later be verified only after government declassification. It diagnosed illnesses doctors had overlooked. It predicted earthquakes with precise accuracy. It described CIA programs word for word, programs Jane Roberts had no way of knowing at the time, and that is why the CIA took notice. They didn't care about metaphysics or channeling. They cared because this entity, whoever or whatever it was, kept revealing their classified operations. They opened a file, not because they believed, but because they feared. Because Seth pierced through information barriers as if they didn't exist. Because his knowledge wasn't acquired, it was accessed. The nature of Seth. But Seth didn't come to impress scientists or predict political events. He came to deliver a message so radical it threatened the very foundation of religion, science, and government control. He came to expose the deepest truth. Consciousness creates reality, not metaphorically, not vibrationally, literally. The physical world is secondary, a reflection, a projection, a holographic expression of your inner state. Matter bends to mind. Time responds to belief. Identity is not confined to the body but expands across dimensions. And the soul is not a passive passenger. It is the architect. Seth insisted that every individual is a multidimensional creator, generating their world like a projector, casting images onto a screen. Your beliefs are the film, your thoughts are the frame, your emotions are the energy source, and the life you see, touch, and suffer through, or triumph through, is the exact projection of your own inner architecture. Change the belief and you change the event. Change the expectation and you shift the timeline. Change the self-perception and the universe reorganizes itself to match it. This was not New Age fantasy. Researchers, psychologists, and scholars tested Seth relentlessly. They questioned, challenged, provoked, and attempted to expose Jane as a fraud. Every attempt failed. Every experiment strengthened the mystery. In one famous case, a Yale psychologist visited to debunk her. After 4 hours with Seth, he walked out in shock. Seth had just recited his mother's final words in flawless Russian, a language Jane did not know. This happened repeatedly. Seth answered unspoken questions. He described events happening hundreds of miles away in real time. He predicted technological and political shifts decades in advance. And yet his message remained unshakably consistent. You are creating your reality. Every thought is a blueprint. Every emotion is a command. Every expectation is a law. The tragedy, Seth said, is not that humans lack power, it's that they've been trained to forget they ever had it. The world teaches you that reality is fixed, static, external, that you are small, fragile, helpless, at the mercy of fate or God or luck or genetics. But Seth revealed that God is not an external being, it is the creative force flowing through you. That the soul is not trapped in a body, it's orchestrating the body. That time is not linear, it is a flexible dimension you navigate with attention. That your future is not predetermined, it is chosen, crafted, sculpted by the beliefs you dare to hold. And this is where the conspiracy begins. If humans truly understood the mechanics of consciousness, no government could control them, no institution could manipulate them, no system could keep them small. A fully awakened population is impossible to govern. That is why the Seth material has always existed in a strange limbo, studied quietly by physicists, admired secretly by intelligence agencies, whispered about by philosophers, yet ignored by the mainstream culture. It is the forbidden manual for creating reality, for bending probability, for rewriting the script of your own existence. Seth said that everything you perceive is a reflection of your inner state. If you see chaos, there is chaos within. If you live in fear, your world becomes a mirror of fear. If you believe you are powerless, reality itself will echo that belief. But the moment you shift your internal stance even slightly, the outer world begins to shift with you. Not metaphorically, mechanically, like tuning the frequency of a radio and hearing an entirely different broadcast. Jane documented every session, every prediction, every anomaly, tens of thousands of pages, and within them, Seth left instructions, a blueprint for bending reality. Not rituals, not spells, not supernatural shortcuts, but cognitive tools, emotional technologies, consciousness protocols that activate the creative force of the soul. When people used them, their lives changed dramatically. Illnesses disappeared, opportunities emerged, synchronicities multiplied, coincidences became patterns, and the impossible became common. Because the truth is this: the universe is not external, it is participatory. You don't observe it, you generate it, every day, with every thought, with every belief, with every focus of attention. The world you will experience tomorrow is being sculpted right now, in this moment, by the beliefs you hold and the expectations you nurture. And that is what they tried to hide. Not Seth, not Jane, but the truth Seth revealed. That you are not living inside a cosmic machine. You are the one powering it. You are not following a script. You are writing it. You are not a character. You are the author. And once you know this, once you feel it, once you test it, reality begins to answer to you. Tomorrow is not waiting. It is listening. The practice of sliding, altering the frame, without moving the body. There are parts of the manuscript, thin, brittle pages at the back, written in slanted spirals as if the ink itself feared being read, that do not describe energy the way the others do. They warn about it, not with threats, not with fear, but with a curious tenderness, as if the author knew that the human mind, when confronted with its own infinite power, trembles first before it remembers that it has always been divine. These are what later mystics would name Seth's forbidden practices, forbidden not because they harm, but because they disrupt the machinery that the world has built around your perception. They dismantle the hypnosis, they break the comfort of forgetting, they reintroduce you to yourself. And the self, when first encountered unmasked, can feel like a stranger, or something much older than you want to admit. The manuscript calls the first practice the soft shift, the ability to nudge reality 1 millimeter at a time. Seth writes that the world is not a fixed structure, but a stable hallucination maintained by agreement. The moment you withdraw even a fraction of that agreement, the frame around you bends. Not violently, not dramatically, just enough. The forbidden nature of this practice lies in its subtlety. You do not chant, you do not command, you simply uncommit to the solidity of what you see. You stare at an object, your hand, your wall, the line of a stranger's face, and for a heartbeat you allow the possibility that it's not what you've been taught. At first it flickers, then it softens, then it rearranges itself, not visually, but informationally. You sense the world as if it were a dream trying to hold itself together. Seth wrote, "Reality trembles when you stop believing in it fully." Some readers interpret this as sinister, but Seth never meant it that way. He meant only to show that you are not trapped in the world, you are participating in it, and participation is optional. The danger is not in the shifting. The danger is in the fear that arises when you discover how easily things can move. And so the manuscript insists, always end the slide with gratitude. Always remind yourself that softness is not chaos and that you remain held by something benevolent. The threading technique, entering the emotion beneath the emotion. This is the technique that upsets scholars the most, because the manuscript says every emotion you feel is not the real one, only the surface. Beneath anger is longing. Beneath longing is memory. Beneath memory is distortion. Beneath distortion is a signal. And beneath the signal is the source code of your consciousness. Threading is the act of following a feeling downward like a rope lowered into a well. You do not analyze the feeling. You do not name it. You do not tame it. You simply let it sink you into itself. Ancient commentators believed this technique was forbidden because it dissolves the ego too quickly. A person can go from rage to vulnerability to primal memory to transcendence in minutes, and human psychology, craving structure, rarely welcomes such rapid transformation. But Seth argued the opposite, that humans suffer not because they feel too much, but because they do not feel deep enough. They dance on the surface of their own lives, terrified of the ocean beneath. Threading forces you to meet your original wound, the one that predates every story you tell about yourself. And when you meet it, it dissolves, not violently, but like a knot melting under warmth. Scholars feared the power of this practice because it makes people uncontrollable, but Seth responded with compassion. A person who is no longer ruled by their wounds becomes incapable of harming others. In truth, nothing about threading is sinister. What people call dark is often only the unfamiliar depth of their own healing. The breach of quiet, the practice of hearing the unspoken frequency. There is a frequency beneath thought, a hum, a vibration, a constant whisper that is not a voice but a movement. Seth believed that all beings generate it, from insects to oceans to stars. This practice teaches you to hear it, not with your ears but with your attention. You sit in silence not to escape the world, but to tune to the frequency beneath it. At first you hear nothing, then you hear everything, but without distinction, one continuous wave rising and falling. And then, subtly, you begin to distinguish the signatures, the warmth of your own breath, the tremor of another person's fatigue, the soft panic of someone longing to be understood, the quiet joy of a leaf turning sunlight into life. Seth warned that many abandoned this practice because it made them feel too open, too permeable, as if the world was entering them without permission. But he insisted this was only the first stage. The permeability is not vulnerability, it is resonance. Once you cross the breach, compassion becomes involuntary. You cannot hear the tremor of another being's suffering without softening toward them. This is why some called the technique dangerous. Compassion is the one force that makes systems of power tremble. From here, the manuscript moves into the final forbidden practice, the reversal, though it hides it behind mirrored phrasing and metaphors as if uncertain whether the reader is ready. Reversal is not literal death. It is the voluntary collapse of the identity you've been performing. You withdraw your attention from preferences, history, the shape of your name. You release the architecture of selfhood until what remains is only awareness, vast, directionless, unanchored. It feels like falling, it feels like dissolving, it feels like stepping into a space where nothing touches you and yet everything is inside you. Many feared this practice because surrender resembles defeat, but Seth insisted this is the one practice that returns you to full choice. You do not lose yourself, you shed the costume of yourself. You return wearing nothing but truth, and once you stand in that truth, you realize nothing has ever truly harmed you. Not because pain was an illusion, but because you are always larger than it. These practices were forbidden not because they are dark, nor because they break the world, but because they make you unmanageable. A person who can shift reality, descend into their own emotion, hear the unspoken frequency, and die without dying can no longer be frightened into obedience. They cannot be manipulated, they cannot be shamed, they cannot be convinced they are small. Seth's practices were forbidden because they return your sovereignty to you, and yet the manuscript ends with a reminder, gentle, luminous, and achingly compassionate. Power without tenderness becomes cruelty. Tenderness without power becomes suffering. Practice both your body, your environment, and your circumstances. Everything you touch, everything you fear, everything you long for is consciousness condensed into form. Not random, not accidental, but patterned according to the beliefs you carry in the deepest chambers of your mind. Seth described this with a kind of serene precision that startled even seasoned metaphysicians. The world you walk through is the externalization of your internal state. You did not land in a human life by accident. You chose it. You selected this density, this texture of reality, this narrow tunnel of perception, because it serves a purpose in your evolution. If you could momentarily step outside your physical filters, you would recognize that every object in your home, every conversation you overhear, every stranger who crosses your path is appearing because your consciousness summoned them into the theatre of your experience. The world is not around you, it is projected from within you, a mirror so flawless, so immediate, that most people forget they are the ones casting the reflection. But this realization leads to an uncomfortable riddle. If you are the architect of your reality, why does the landscape of your life feel unfinished, distorted, or painfully small? Why is it marked by constraints you never asked for? Why does it feel like someone else sketched the blueprint and left you trapped inside the walls? The answer is both simple and devastating. You are the creator, but you were handed a corrupted template. You are the author, but you've been hypnotized into reading from a script written by forces that profit from your forgetfulness. The architecture of the lie is ancient. Your prison needs no bars because it lives in your beliefs, beliefs installed so early, so quietly, that you never had the chance to question them. These beliefs became the invisible coding language of your personal simulation. From birth, your inner software was programmed, not maliciously by individuals, but systematically by a culture that has itself been programmed for centuries. Family, school, religion, media, they delivered a script already infected with a psychic virus, a code designed to keep you predictable, obedient, manageable. You absorbed it before you even knew language, and once installed, it ran your reality automatically. Think of the phrases whispered to you as if they were harmless wisdom. Money is the root of all evil. A linguistic spell engineered to disconnect you from abundance and ensure that you remain dependent on systems of labor and hierarchy. Don't get your hopes up. A subtle order instructing you to surrender before you even try, shrinking your potential so the world doesn't have to. These are not innocent sayings. They are commands, quiet psychological weapons that freeze your reality into a loop of scarcity, repetition, and self-doubt. This matrix of limiting beliefs isn't merely mental. It carries an energetic charge. It becomes the vibration that molds your experiences. Your belief in scarcity becomes the bills piling on your table. Your belief in unworthiness becomes relationships that collapse. Your fear of the unknown becomes opportunities that evaporate before you act. And the institutions running the collective game, media, corporations, governments, understand this machinery with chilling sophistication. They don't need to shackle you physically. Why would they when they can colonize your beliefs? Control becomes effortless when you own the thoughts that create reality. But here is the crack in the system, the flaw in their design. Scripts can be rewritten, programs can be patched, beliefs can be deinstalled. A prison made of thoughts dissolves the moment you realize you were the one holding the key all along. To escape the simulation, you must first recognize its language. Then, you must detach from the programming itself. What comes next is not philosophy, it is a manual. A blueprint for the forbidden protocol that Seth once whispered to the few who dared to listen. Forbidden Protocol number 1, the Blank Slate Meditation. This first protocol is not a relaxation technique or a spiritual exercise, it is a temporary jailbreak from the simulation. With it, you wipe your mental operating system clean, stripping away the false roles etched into your identity so you can glimpse the unconditioned self beneath. Sit anywhere the world won't intrude. Let your breath fall into a natural rhythm. For the next few minutes, you will erase yourself, gently, deliberately, without fear. Begin with your name. Imagine the letters dissolving like sand carried off by the tide. Then stripped away your gender, your age, your ethnicity, your job, each one turning to smoke and drifting beyond reach. Deeper still, release your memories, both cherished and painful. Release the stories you repeat to justify who you are. Release even the concept that you are human. Let every label fall off you like old paint. When nothing remains but awareness, a silent, luminous point of perception, you have stepped outside the simulation. You have paused the broadcast of the artificial self. From this state, ask one question. If I could choose myself anew in this moment, who would I become? Before a new future can be constructed, the chains of the past must be dissolved. The system counts on your belief that time is linear, fixed, untouchable. It teaches that the past is a permanent archive and that your present is simply its consequence. But Seth disclosed a truth that shakes this illusion to its core. Time is not linear. Consciousness is. Time is a perceptual convenience, a sorting mechanism, a way for the physical mind to process infinite experience without fracturing. In the dimension where your greater consciousness resides, past, present, and future coexist in a single, spatial now. Your past is not behind you. It is happening alongside you. Your future is not ahead. It is already formed in possibilities, waiting for your beliefs to choose which version crystallizes. Do not hunt for an answer. Simply let the void respond. The images, sensations, or impulses that arise are fragments of your authentic self, your essence uncorrupted by the program. Practice this often. Every session weakens the gravitational pull of the false identity you inherited. You have now recognized the prison. But recognition is not liberation. Awareness is not transformation. To truly hack the simulation, you must learn how to rewrite the rules of time itself. Once you understand this, you realize you are not bound by your past. You're in dialogue with it. You're not the product of your history, you are the editor of it. And the editing begins the moment you dare to challenge the script you were given. Seth told her something so unsettling, so wildly out of bounds of what the world teaches, that it took years before she could even admit she believed it. The past is not over. It is not behind you, it is not fixed. What you call the past is nothing more than a cluster of impressions, beliefs, and emotional imprints held inside your consciousness right now. And because they exist in you, not in the world, they remain editable, mutable, alive. The past is not a graveyard of events, but a living script that can be rewritten at any moment. Seth emphasized that this wasn't about denying the difficult moments, nor about fooling yourself with fantasy. It was about something far more radical, changing the energetic architecture of your memories so that their influence on your present dissolves. The memory remains, but its meaning evaporates. Its vibration changes. And once its vibration changes, the trajectory of your future shifts instantly. This alone would have been revolutionary, but Seth went further. He hinted that the institutions shaping modern society, education, government, media, psychiatry, know that the past is malleable. They understand that memory is a programmable interface, that trauma is a technology. They know that emotional shock imprints deeply, and imprints become beliefs, and beliefs generate reality. This is why the world profits from your wounds, why certain histories are force-fed and others erased, why you're encouraged to repeat your traumas like mantras. The system keeps you revisiting pain because the moment you revise it, the spell breaks. You pull the plug out of the machine that feeds on your fear. This is the silent war Seth tried to expose, a war not for land or money, but for the architecture of your inner world. And from this revelation emerged one of his most potent tools, the revision technique. By realizing that time is not linear but simultaneous, you grasp that the past is not an anchor, but a suggestion, not a chain, but a story. And any story, when consciously retold, begins to rewrite the universe itself. Seth warned her, whenever you replay a painful memory, you're performing psychic self-sabotage. You're pulling an old corrupted slide from your subconscious and projecting it again, letting it imprint your current frequency. You are in effect volunteering to stay enslaved, Bo. But the moment you revise the memory, even if only in your inner world, you release yourself from the loop. You turn the key, you slip out of the invisible handcuffs. You have seen the prison, Seth whispered, so now it is time to learn how to dismantle it. These were not gentle instructions, they were war strategies, mental insurgency protocols against a system that feeds on unconscious minds. The first directive was simple yet profound. Take back your power in the now, because the system's strongest trap is to keep you drifting between regret and fear. Regret chains you to what cannot be changed. Fear chains you to what has not yet happened. In both states, you are powerless, a spectator, a ghost in your own life. Seth's teaching was blunt. Your power does not exist in the past or the future. Your power is in the razor-thin sliver of this exact moment. All realities bloom from here. All timelines bend from here. Forbidden Protocol number 2, the Power Anchor. Protocol number 2, the Power Anchor, is not a meditation. It is a psychic revolt. Whenever anxiety hooks into your mind, whenever your thoughts try to pull you into another time, you stop. You halt the machinery. And with the force of a cosmic command, you assert, "My point of power is now," and you feel the words. You let your awareness collapse into the present like a star falling into itself. This alone begins to sever the strings the system has attached to your consciousness. Because in the now, you are no longer programmable, you're no longer suggestible, you're no longer hypnotized by history or hijacked by fear. But Seth warned that for most people, holding the present is like holding lightning. It slips, it burns, it shocks the ego, which thrives on time. So he offered a second forbidden protocol, the inner sound technique. Every consciousness emits a frequency, a subtle hum, a primordial vibration that is as unique as a fingerprint. But because modern society drowns you in noise, distraction, and digital static, you rarely hear your own signal. And this is not an accident. The noisier the world, the weaker your connection to yourself. Seth taught her to sit in silence, close her eyes and listen, not with her ears, but with her awareness. Beneath all thoughts, beneath all noise, beneath all identity, there is a quiet internal hum, the sound of your being, the steady pulse of your existence. This inner tone is your psychic anchor, your stabilizer, the frequency that pulls you back from the gravitational pull of past and future. This is the sound that the ancients called the inner bell, the unstruck chord, the voice of the soul. In secret mystery schools, initiates were trained to hear this sound before they were taught anything else. Because the ones who could hear their own frequency could not be easily controlled. They could not be imprinted with fear. They could not be manipulated by external authority. And once she mastered the inner sound, Seth handed her the weapon the system most fears: revision, the ability to alter the energetic skeleton of one's past. Every night before sleep, she was to review her day backward, from evening to morning. Moving backward disrupts the illusion of linear time, and when she came to a moment of emotional pain, she was to stop and reshoot the scene. Not as fantasy, but as energetic substitution. She was to imagine the best possible version of that moment and then feel it with such fullness that the new version overwrote the old. With repetition, the original wound dissolved. This was not delusion, it was quantum recalibration. A recalibration the ancients once used to heal trauma, erase curses, and collapse unwanted timelines. Deep revision went further, returning to childhood moments, rewriting them, erasing the programs installed when she was most vulnerable. Seth revealed that changing these core memories sends shockwaves through your entire personal timeline, rearranging your present self and altering your future without force. And then he gave her the most forbidden knowledge of all. You are not one self, you are an entire legion. Every version of you that could have existed does exist. All your paths not taken are living, breathing yous exploring parallel timelines. And because each of your probable selves is connected to you through the greater consciousness, you can access them, contact them, download their abilities, their strength, their wisdom. This is the secret that governments whispered about in black budget labs. The secret mystics tried to hide in symbolism. The secret intelligence agencies attempted to weaponize. Consciousness is fractal, multidimensional, and communicative across timelines. You can reach your wealthy self, your genius self, your fearless self, your healed self, your spiritually awakened self. You can command them, merge with them, absorb their knowledge. According to Seth, this is not merely possible, it is natural. It is your birthright. And that was only the beginning. Because once you master the past, the present, and the alternate versions of yourself, you are ready for the final revelation: how to bend space-time itself. And that, he warned her, is where the real danger begins. The creative frequency of the universe is not merely an emotion you feel. It is a tuning fork that resonates through the architecture of reality itself. When you step into that state of pure coherence, your entire being begins to vibrate in harmony with the field that births stars, collapses timelines, and animates consciousness. Seth taught that this resonance is not a metaphor, it is a physics of the soul. In that moment of alignment, you are not attracting your desires, you are generating them from the inside out, the way a sun generates light simply by existing. To feel this frequency is to remember your origin. In deep meditation, when thought finally releases its grip and the ego stops clinging to its illusions of control, something extraordinary happens. You touch the sacred void, the endless stillness beneath all form. This void is not nothingness, as the materialist worldview claims. It is the field of pure potential, the womb of existence. Every possibility, every timeline, every lifetime emerges from that silent, shimmering quantum darkness. Ancient mystics knew this. Modern quantum field theorists suspect it. Seth declared it outright. The void is the source code of the universe. But the void has locations, energetic coordinates that intensify its presence. Seth spoke of geographic coordinate points, physical places where the membrane between the inner world of thought and the outer world of matter becomes unusually thin. In ancient cultures, these spots became temples, stone circles, or pilgrimage sites. Not because the ancients were superstitious, but because they were attuned. They felt the energy, the hum, the inexplicable surge of clarity that radiated from certain points on Earth's surface. Many of these places still exist: Machu Picchu, Delphi, Sedona, Uluru, but others are hidden in plain sight. A forgotten room in your childhood home, a quiet clearing in a forest, a street corner you always felt inexplicably drawn to. To find these coordinate points, you must use the inner senses you are now reawakening. When you stand in such a place, the shift is unmistakable. The air seems denser, charged. Your heartbeat synchronizes to an invisible pulse, thoughts quiet. Synchronicities multiply with unnerving precision. Ideas flow as if whispered by a higher intelligence. These locations are accelerators, places where manifestation and intuitive insight erupt with tenfold power. And when you stumble into one of these moments, whether temporal or geographic, Seth's instruction is absolute. Stop everything. Do not speak, do not think in the normal way. This is not a moment for grocery lists or worries. This is the moment for your most sacred work, for feeling your wish fulfilled, for summoning a quantum download from your probable selves, for rewriting a traumatic memory so thoroughly that reality itself reshapes around your new emotional signature. At these hotspots, your thoughts are not simply thoughts. They are commands issued to the substrate of reality. They are explosions in the field. This brings us into one of Seth's most forbidden teachings, the Time Expansion Directive, a protocol that pulls back the curtain on yet another illusion humanity has treated as sacred. Chronological time. Seth insisted that time is not a river you float down, trapped in its current. It is a lens, one you can widen or contract at will. When you learn to expand the moment, you begin to operate on soul time instead of clock time. Begin with 10 uninterrupted minutes. Close your eyes, announce to your consciousness, I am now expanding this moment. I have all the psychological time I need. As you breathe, imagine the second hand of a clock slowing to a crawl. Feel spaciousness open around your mind like a vast cathedral. Within this expanded inner space, you can heal an emotion that might have taken months, or unravel a problem that baffled you for years. It is not imagination. It is perception freed from the artificial compression imposed by physical senses. Once you begin working with these advanced protocols, the world around you changes. Synchronicities surge. Dreams become instructional. Intuition becomes surgical. You feel as though you are stepping into a parallel version of your own life, one in which you suddenly have influence over the very threads of time and space. But Seth's final question lingers like a shadow. Why were these abilities hidden from you in the first place? To answer that, you must dismantle humanity's deepest program, the belief that the divine exists outside of you. Seth unveiled the truth with both compassion and precision. The throne of God, the mighty seat where the Sky Father is imagined to judge the living and the dead, is empty. Not because God does not exist, but because God is not a person. God is the infinite, intelligent, creative field, all that is, the self-aware ocean of consciousness from which all realities emerge. You are not separate from it. You are one of its waves. This changes everything. You are not appealing to a higher power. You are activating it from within yourself. The sense of smallness dissolves. The fear of judgment evaporates. Prayers transform into conversations with the deeper layers of your own being. Seth taught a revolutionary practice known as direct dialogue with Source. Not begging, not chanting, not reciting, dialogue. You sit in quiet and speak to all that is as if speaking to a wise, loving presence that knows you because it is you. Ask, listen, trust. The answers do not always arrive as words, they come as feelings, symbols, sudden clarity, or real-world synchronicities that border on impossible. When you treat these insights as deliberate communications rather than coincidences, the dialogue deepens. You begin to live in a world where the divine is not distant but conversational. This leads to the next shattering truth. The soul is not a fragile object you carry like a jewel inside you. It is an evolving process, a spiraling force of perpetual becoming. You are not a body with a soul, you are a soul temporarily expressing through a body, a vortex of intelligence gathering experiences, shaping itself, expanding through countless lifetimes and timelines all at once. Seth insisted, you cannot be destroyed. You can only transform, and the purpose of existence is not obedience, but expansion. Evil, Seth once hinted, is not a force, nor a creature, nor a cosmic enemy looming in the shadows of the universe. It is something far more intimate and far more misunderstood. A distortion in the architecture of consciousness, a misalignment within the multidimensional self. He spoke of it as an echo, a vibration produced when the self forgets its own origin, when awareness shrinks so tightly that it begins to mistake separation for truth and fear for identity. According to him, darkness is not the presence of something monstrous. It is the absence of remembered light. And yet, he warned, this absence can grow teeth if ignored long enough. Seth taught that every being exists across layers, what he called the spectrum of selves, a continuum of consciousness stretching across dimensions humanity has not yet learned to map. You're a point on that spectrum, he said, but also a bridge, a translator, and a fragment of a much larger presence that watches your life the way you might observe a dream, with compassion, curiosity, and a faint ache to be heard. Evil emerges only when communication between these layers collapses, when the physical self feels isolated, abandoned, or rootless. It compensates by clinging to power, control, and fear. These impulses do not arise from a cosmic villain or demonic force. They arise from a desperate attempt to feel real. This is why, Seth insisted, the greatest danger to humanity is not an extraterrestrial threat, nor a government conspiracy, nor an approaching apocalypse. The true danger is disconnection, the narrowing of awareness that blinds us to our own deeper nature. And it is in this context that he introduced what he called the final forbidden practices. Not forbidden because they are evil, but because misusing them without understanding can fracture the psyche. These practices, he said, were once part of ancient schools of knowledge found in Sumer, Tibet, pre-dynastic Egypt, and among certain star-seeking tribes of the Americas. Over time, they were hidden, diluted, or branded as taboo because the world was not ready. The first of these practices was the art of cross-translation, the ability to shift awareness between layers of the multidimensional self while still awake. Most people do this only in dreams, and only unconsciously, but the ancient adepts learned to do it deliberately, allowing them to retrieve information, heal memories, or access intuition on a level that feels almost supernatural. Seth said that if misused for ego manipulation or escape, this technique could cause the physical self to lose its anchor. But when used with humility, it becomes a way of remembering who you truly are. The second forbidden practice was what Seth called the inversion of attention, a method of focusing consciousness inward with such intensity that the physical world begins to feel like the dream, and the inner world becomes stable, structured, and lucid. This inversion reveals that the internal self is not imaginary, it is the architect. Everything external, Seth said, is a translation of that inner architecture. But those who turn inward without grounding, without compassion for themselves, can encounter what feels like evil. Not because something is hunting them, but because unresolved fears manifest in the only language they understand, imagery and sensation. He cautioned that this practice should never be attempted as a form of escapism. It is not a retreat, it is a pilgrimage. Forbidden Protocol number 3, pattern merging. The third forbidden practice, the most dangerous and the most transformative, was what Seth referred to as pattern merging, the intentional alignment of your vibration with another conscious being. This was not telepathy, not empathy, and not possession. It was something more subtle, the recognition that the boundaries between selves are more fluid than humans assume. Through this technique, adepts could synchronize with another person's emotional field, memory echoes, or even fragments of their future probabilities. But Seth warned that merging with another being without compassion leads to distortion, confusion, and even psychological collapse. This practice requires not only discipline but tenderness, the willingness to meet another consciousness without judgment. These practices, Seth explained, were labelled forbidden in ancient times because humanity was still learning to differentiate curiosity from hunger, wisdom from power, and exploration from domination. The danger was never in the techniques themselves. It was in the human tendency to approach the unknown with fear or ego. And history, he noted, is full of examples where spiritual techniques became corrupt when used by rulers, priests, or secret societies seeking authority rather than understanding. But Seth was adamant that none of this knowledge is sinister in its essence. The sinister aspect only emerges when the heart is absent. If compassion is present, if gentleness is present, then even the deepest exploration becomes a path back to wholeness. The multidimensional self is never trying to harm you, he taught. It is always trying to reintegrate you, to pull you closer to the center, where fear cannot thrive. What humanity calls evil, he said, is simply the self in a state of amnesia. He warned, however, that humanity is approaching a collective decision point. Not a cosmic judgment, not a divine punishment, but a psychological threshold, a moment where the world must choose whether to collapse inward through fear or expand outward through awareness. The forbidden practices, he said, were never meant to be tools of power, they were safeguards. Keys, bridges between the layers of identity so that humanity would not lose itself as technology accelerates, as belief systems shift, as old structures dissolve. And in the end, Seth's message was simple. Nothing is truly forbidden if approached with love. The universe hides nothing from those who seek with an open heart. The unseen world is not hostile. The deeper layers of the self are not dangerous. And even what you fear most within yourself is simply a fragment waiting to be healed. In the quietest moments of his teachings, Seth would pause, as if listening to something beyond words, and then say, "If you wish to overcome evil, do not fight it. Illuminate it. What is remembered cannot remain dark." I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.